Good old paint. So this is the glory of living liquid. Or, wait, no, limit cut. Okay, so we're going to start first by getting rid of all this white because it's hurting my eyes. Okay, then we're going to put down our circle. This circle represents everything that's wrong with the world. It's going to be a big circle. Oops. And then we're going to have another circle. Oh, man, I suck at this one. Okay, so we have a couple of circles. We then have one smaller circle. Okay. Now we have to place our markers. This is the letter A in red because it will be a red marker. Right? Then we will have, I don't know, B is usually like here-ish. D is on west. This C is south. And the two markers east, which is also yellow. Okay, these are all the markers you need to do limit cut. There's going to be 2 explosions. And maybe those explosions, well, those explosions always spawn on particular lines. So there are black lines going from the middle to the outside of the arena that create the pizza slices. Like this. Right? So that's where the explosions happen, on the black line. Well, in between, really. Like, let's say it originates here. It will cover this whole area. So you stop at the line, you're safe from the explosion. This looks like a nipple, so we're going to undo it. Okay, so let's say D to B is the hemisphere. We're going to draw an imaginary line from D to B. This imaginary line covers Group 1's play area. If an explosion, the center of it, takes place anywhere from B to D, then Group 1 will run into that explosion. Everywhere else is going to be Group 2. Right, so, this whole part. Just like that. That's Group 2. They go like so. If the explosion starts on 2, Group 2 will always go direct. If it's like directly east, it's always Group 2. If it's directly west, because they're opposite, it's always Group 1, right? Boom. Because it's not a perfect split. If it lands on B, it's going to be Group 1, because the opposite explosion will be down here, which is south of D. That's in Group 2 territory. Only Group 2 can go into Group 2 territory. Only Group 1, the chosen group, can go on B. So the way I think about it is that if it's on D or B, like those are my markers. If it's anywhere else, like it's not Group 1. And at this point I know the pattern so well that it's very obvious, but it takes some time to be like, oh, it landed on the B, I'm going to be Group 1. Go up there. So who's Group 1? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about numbers. This is the number 1. This is the number 2. Do you know how to count We go 1, we go 2, then we count to 5, and then we count to 6, because 1 is to 2 as 5 is to 6. 5 is just 1, the second coming of 1, and 6 is the second coming of 2. They are the first in a sequence of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 5. These are the first two numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the first two numbers, right? So this square of firsts is group 1, which means these leftovers, these 3, 4, 7, and 8, this is group 2, right? These are the outcasts, the unclean ones. They go to the south realm. They do not get the glory of D. They do not get the glory of B. So let's do some mock explosions. Let's pretend it's the most confusing pattern for most people. The first explosion lands directly on D and directly on 2. Right? That means 3, player 3, 4, 7, and 8 will go here. 3, 4, 7, 8. This is where they start their journey. And they want to be on the crust, you know? So the crust is a magical realm. This is the crust. This space between spaces, right? 3 and 4 want to be on the crust. 7 and 8, we're going to move them. Nobody loves them really that much. So we're going to just give them a happy little home out here on the edge, right? And this is how it works. Player 3 and 4 are going to pop sprint because the firsts in both sequences, let's make a new box, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I call these the sprinters. Look at this guy, he's flying, right? Absolute legend. He's just, he's upset about it. Grr, you know? Now, I personally sprint pretty much no matter who I am because I am easily frightened. So these guys don't have to sprint, but I would argue that they should when it's their turn. Like, not right away, you know. Happy, right? Just because a difference in lagging behind and not being first can kill other people. And I think it was Ricky Bobby who said, if you're not first, you're last. Let's remember that quote because we're going to need it to get through this mechanic. And it's true. It's a true mindset to have for any mechanic where you have to be first. If you're player 1, you need to be first. You need to be at the front of the line. You need to be on the cutting edge. If you're not at the front, if you're not early to lunchtime, you miss lunchtime because you're player 1, right? So if you're one of these 1, 2, 3, 4s, you've got to race. You've got to Ricky Bobby it. You need to not worry so much about what could go wrong, and you need to worry about what will go right when you race as far as you can go to a certain point, at which point you will overstep your bounds and die. So players 3 and 4, they are the Ricky Bobbies. So they come to the left of this line. Look at this white line that we created here. They're on the left side of it. They're on the left side of it because the second explosion, oops, the second explosion takes place here in this pizza slice. And the cutoff is this line. This line, if you are on the left of it, you will not die. You could be here here, anywhere, you're on the left side. So that just as a default, you wait for the first explosion before crossing the line of symmetry, right? So now that the second explosion has happened, you saw the fire, you can run inside of the fire because it hasn't disappeared yet, but you're running. And you know it's safe all the way up to, that's right, the next line. So these sprinters, they've popped sprint from the middle. They've raced up here to this line. Then they wait at that line for this explosion to go off. Once that explosion in front of them goes off, they sprint to the next line and then they stop because the next explosion is going to take place. So we are now 3 explosions deep. 3, right? And once that explosion goes off, they'll go to the next line. And then another explosion will go off. Explosion number 4, right? So they're going to go all the way up to this line. And at this point, they will stop because the 6th or the 5th explosion happens in the middle. 5, right? That's the indicator for player 3 and 4 that it's time to stop. When the explosion in the middle goes off, you stop at that line, you do not cross go, and you pop knockback, anti-knockback, anti-knockback. And that lasts like, I don't know, 6 seconds or something. I don't know. Maybe it's 12 now. Who knows? I don't think so. But anyways, you pop anti-knockback because Cruise Chaser is then going to spawn on player 3, and he's very angry. He's like, and he shoots his cone at player 3, and it kills everyone in the whole world, and it knocks player 3 back. But if player 3 anti-knockbacks, they just take some damage, and then they skedaddle right on out of the way. And then as soon as player 3 gets hit, player 4 will be behind them, right? Like here. Player 3, player 4. And then Cruise Chaser is going to dash, and it's wide. His entire girth of his hitbox will blast in this direction, right? So player 7 and 8, if we revisit them, right, they were on the edge. They've been running all the way through these 4 explosions to here, which is a good spot to be because player 3, if we draw perpendicular lines for player 3 and 4, this is the safe spot that doesn't get hit by an AoE, this box. So players 7 and 8, check it out. Boom, boom, bam, boom. They're here. They're in the mix. They're alive because they're on the perpendicular line. So player 3, you know, you got this AoE that's green and pink and this one that's red and pink. Like, those can only hit those 2 players. At this point, player 3 is now on moving to the outside after he gets hit. Player 4 stands completely still, looking at player 3, hitting his anti-knockback so until the boss blasts through him. Once the boss blasts through player 4, he also runs up, and he'll probably run up at like this angle to get there about here. He doesn't want to fall too far behind, right? So player 3 and 4 are on the edge, and they're running with the AoEs, and players 7 and 8 are now in the crust. They're crustables. And so at this point, we are 5 explosions deep. The 6th explosion will happen. I'll draw it here, right here, where they are now. So you wait for that explosion on the line, but it will take place while the Cruise Chaser attacks are going off. So you'll see the explosion. They can run in to this explosion and stop at this line here until this explosion goes off. And then players 7 and 8 are going to run through these explosions. Meanwhile, you know, player 4 and 3 are running out here, and then finally the 3rd explosion will take place here, and players 7 and 8 will stop on this line. Hold on. In this order, 7 will get hit by Cruise Chaser. He's back. He's angry. He's like, "Caca, I'm a bird plane," right? Right, and then he blasts again player 7 with this cone, and then player 8 with this cone. And so, of course, where's the safe spot for player 4 and 3? It's the perpendicular line. Everyone has a job to do, and everyone does every job in this mechanic. They just do it at different times. And so player 4 and 3 need to be here, right? Or what is more common with this is that there is a 10th explosion that takes place in the middle. A second middle explosion occurs before 7 and 8 are done with their mechanics. If you see the second middle explosion occur, it is safe for player 3 and 4 to just go middle. So they can either do it this way or they can go middle after the second explosion. Either one is acceptable, right? So that's how it goes. After that, 7 and 8 also goes here. The healer, the shield healer, drops their AoE something or another on the 7th explosion. That is a thing that happens when you're optimizing because the bosses come down after this. Brute Justice, Mr. Blowjobs, and Cruise Chaser, they call him Mr. Cum Cum. Like listen, I don't make these names. It's just how I was taught it. They blast down from hell itself. Well, from heaven actually, because they're angels. And look, he's smiling. And they do a bunch of damage here. And so the healer wants to shield on the 7th or whatever, or put down their soil, for example. And then that way, when these come down, it's not quite so bad. And then the trumpets play. And let me tell you what. If you have not heard the silver trumpets of Gondor call you home and say, the lords of Gondor have returned, right? If you have not heard that, you are missing out because it is just these are trumpets. Don't. All right. So those are the trumpets. That's what we're going for. If you hear the trumpets, you made it through limit cut, right? But that's only group 2. And the reason we tackled it from group 2's perspective on the most complicated or the most often mistaken pattern is because I think that's probably the one that's harder to understand. Even though they're exactly the same. Remember, we have our groups over here 1, 2, 5, 6. They are the firsts. 3, 4, 7, 8. They are the seconds. So they are group 2. They happen last. It's the timing really that throws people off and getting to the right side. So that's how you know. I mean, everything would be the same except if the first circle wasn't on 2, let's say it was on here, you know, let's use a different color. Like if the first circle was here, you would just run to the left of this line and it would start and end the same. You just might end like somewhere over here rather than over here, right? Like it's exactly the same. You don't have to worry about that or know that or think about that. You just find the first explosion that's in your part of the map and you go to the left of the line every time. You'll do this exactly the same 1000% of the time, regardless of your different number. It's just that with 1, 2, 5, 6, it's kind of the inferior strategy for teaching people and learning it quickly because you do have a different timing for each number. Whereas the other strategies that are out there, you have the same timing no matter what number you are. It's quite nice. Um, and so also with sprinting, so if we go back to the example of 7 and 8, so when 7 and 8 swapped in around here, this is where 7 should sprint. He's like, when I'm transitioning in and they're transitioning out, 7 and 8 would pop sprint here so that they can catch up to the explosions, get up to the line, and follow closely behind. That's when I do it because it just Ricky Bobby was right. He was absolutely right about being first. You got to get there. You got to go. You got to look at that explosion in the eye and say, I'm going to run inside you. I'm going to be inside you, explosion, after you've gone off. Not before, but after, you know? And so that's a very Ricky Bobby move to make. So now let's talk about group 1. Because group 1, the timing is different. If you're player 1 and you're in the middle, because everyone stacks middle once they find out what their number is because you don't want to get clipped by one of these explosions. Let's say the explosion started on D, like we mentioned, or more commonly, I see it start on A. So for the sake of difference, let's say it started on A and C for the first explosions, right? So player 1 is going to sprint immediately. You have less time than the other group. You notice that the second group doesn't have to pop knockback. Player 3 doesn't have to pop knockback till the middle explosion goes off, which is explosion 5, right? Player 1 has to pop sprint immediately, running up the left side of this. Once the second explosion goes off over here, right? They then cross the line, so they probably won't even be to the crust yet. They cross the line into the explosion to get to the line, and then the third explosion will go off on this side of the line. so they will be here. You can pop knockback on in during the second explosion, and it will last long enough. For me personally, I pop it when I get to the line and the third explosion goes off. So this third explosion goes off here. Player 3 pops knockback. Guess who shows up? You know who it is. Birdman. He's a bird, he's a plane, he's a Birdman plane, and he shoots his AoE at player 1 like so, and it's very wide. Sometimes it even goes this far. So does that, pops anti-knockback, then he blasts player 2 like this. So you notice it crosses the crust, it crosses the outer crust, the inner crust, it crosses everything, as long as player 2 and player 1 are standing accordingly. So where's the safe spot? That's the wrong color. Perpendicular lines, ladies and gentlemen. We've been over this. Are you not paying attention? You should know this by now. We're talking about players 5 and 6. They are they're like right to the side, just like this. This is their safe spot. Boom, boom, boom. If you can't read that, get a new pair of glasses. It's really hard to read. Okay, so after this point, right, we're gonna go back to pink numbers so we can read. Players 5 and 6 go into the crust and they pop sprint. Players 1 and 2 have been blasted. They go to the out of the crust, and it's the exact same thing, except now the timing is different. So it was 2 explosions knocked back. Stop at the line before the third explosion. Third explosion here. We swap out into the third explosion after it goes off. We have a fourth explosion, so we go up to the line. Technically, it's over here, sorry. So players 5. Player. Player 5 and 6 are on this line, right? After the third explosion that went off here. So the fourth explosion goes off here, and then the fifth explosion goes off here, which means these guys, 5 and 6, run 2 explosions up afterwards. Now, I'm pretty sure this timing is correct, but if you notice that your next explosion, right, so you run up to this line, 5 and 6, pop anti-knockback. But if you notice another explosion goes off before you get hit, start running up to that explosion just to make sure. But I'm pretty sure that it's 2 explosions instead of 3, where the other ones, 7 and 8, were like 1, 2, 3. Then they got hit. These ones are 1, 2 because they happen first. You're the first team, right? It makes sense that everything happens a little bit faster for the first team and a little bit slower for the second team. That's how numbers work. 1, 2, 5, 6, 3, 4, 7, 8. And everyone can pop sprint at their preordained time, but you can also do the mechanic without sprint unless you're like player 1 and 2. You'll end up killing people because, again, if you're too slow and these explosions from the other team are catching up to you, they're going to kill people who it's not their turn to get killed yet, you know? They get left in the dust. But anyways, so 1, 2, 5, 6 are down here. Player 5 gets hit. Birdman shows up. Yeah, yada yada. Boom boom. He's like, I'm still a bird, right? And he blasts after 2 explosions. He blasts player 5, and then he blasts player 6 like this, leaving once again the perpendicular lines right here, boop, beep, boom, that lead us to securing the safety of players 1 and 2. So all of this happens, right? This is limit cut, yay, right? And then everyone goes middle, right? Everyone's in middle, and like we said, Cruise Chaser and Brute Justice, our best friends in the whole world, come crashing down and do a lot of damage. So it's important that everyone gets in middle and that they get shielded and healed before that happens. Roughly around the 7th, 8th explosion. The 7 and 8 players have to hustle to get in here and get healed and shielded because they were the last ones to take damage, so they're the lowest health, and they're about to take more damage. This is a point where, personally, as Blackmage, if I'm 7 or 8, I pop this ability right here. You know what this ability is called? Mana Ward. I pop this personal shield on myself so I don't die. If you're a summoner, you have something. A lot of DPS only have like second wind or whatever, so good luck to those guys. But just make it easy to not die. Make it easy not to not die, right? So this happens, and then we enter the Nether realm. So let's go back. Oh, it only goes back that far. Okay, so what if we hear me out. What if we made a new one? And for this one, we're going to draw our stuff, our arenas, right? And boom, and just like that, right? So we have our arena, and everyone's in the middle, and this damage went out. The last thing you do, you're technically in BJCC now, but what you want to do is pay attention to the middle. The middle has these lines that we talked about earlier, right? They're black colored in the game. Everyone has a line to stand on. There's 8 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Yeah. So everyone gets their position. So melee 1, gonna stand right here. Main tank, right here. Melee 2, I think, right here. Healer, healer. Fizz ranged? No. This is caster, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure this is fizz range. I could be wrong. And then off tank. Everyone stands on this circle, this brown circle, but on where their line interconnects, right? So everyone spreads out, the bosses drop, you attack the bosses. You have to do a mechanic where you leave, and then you come back. This is your spot. This is your spot. It's nobody else's spot. You need to know your spot because you will be coming back to this spot. This is your spot. It's based on your job. Northwest. So the A marker is here, right? Northwest is melee 1. That is my spot as Blackmage when I do melee, right? As melee 1. Melee 2, I might be over here if I'm melee 2. Or I might be over here if I'm caster. And I don't really ever do fizz range, but when you do, you're over here, right? The shield healer is here. The pure healer is here. The main tank. The BJCC, the BJ tank is here. The cruise chaser tank is here. You see how everyone has a spot. And the reason for that is because you're going to get a debuff before you leave called Nisi. You can't kiss anyone. If you kiss someone, you're going to give them your cooties, right? And you don't want to give them your cooties until you know you want to be with them for the rest of your life, right? You want to marry this person. They are your partner. So you don't want to kiss them until it's time to kiss them. So because of that, you wait. So you get this debuff on your head. It's a color, right? You don't have to worry about the color. You don't have to think about anything other than that you can't touch anyone. You can't kiss anyone. You move out. You bait these AoEs by being in, right? So these chakram things will spawn, for example, and then they're going to cleave the middle of the arena like this. So once they spawn, you move out, then an explosion spawns on you here, right, to where you move out to. So once these blast through the middle at the speed of light, you then go back to your spot, and then these explosions all cover the outside of the arena. And since you're in your spot, you're safe. And then after that, a big flash of light goes out, right? Big oh my God, Armageddon, what's happening? You're blinded. When that blindness goes away, the whole screen calms down. You've got to kiss your partner. So the melees kiss the healers. Oh wait, hold on. Wait, this melee kisses this healer. This tank, I believe, kisses this guy. These guys kiss, I'm pretty sure. And these guys kiss. Mwah! Right? And then they separate because they need time to think about how they kissed each other and how much they liked it, right? They can't just keep kissing each other or they'll never make it to the second date. So they kiss each other and then they spread out. And that's like the core mechanic for starting BJCC. And the reason why that's the core mechanic is because uh, that's how the developers designed it. They want you to stand on your spot. They want you to get a debuff. They want you to move out. They want you to move in. And then they want you to kiss someone. and then they want you to get away from that person. And that is the exact order you will do it every single time you get to BJCC. You're still on your spot. More mechanics then happen where you have to get out of your spot. Everyone has to get out. But for that, if you can just know your spot, wait for the debuff, wait for the ninja shurikens to spawn on the outside, and then you go out to your spot, and then you wait for the shurikens to blast through middle, and then you go back to your spot. You, without touching anyone, you will have mastered the opener to BJCC, and then after the flashy light, you kiss your partner, and then you get away from them. Like that's it. That's yeah, limit cut into BJCC. So this has been Crayons edition limit cut. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. My email address, my very, very real email address is going to be rickybobby was a blackmage at ooglyboogly.com. So just go ahead and send me an email to this email address, and I will see you next time.